Yeah, it's really a self problem before it's a relationship problem, isn't it? Because for you, for me, for anyone, the listeners, to be able to act a certain way in a relationship, it first starts with them being able to bring a certain level of consciousness or awareness, rather, to their own personal life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Powerful Man Show. I am your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host, Tim, the Powerful Man, Matthews. Tim, what's happening, bro? You're traveling right now. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. We're on a little island off of Wales called Anglesey. And do you know what? How we ended up coming here. It's the second time we've been here. We actually come here at least once a year. We go to Wales twice a year, but we come here once a year. Amelia likes to position it as a holiday for the dogs. We've reached that point in life, Doug, where we now take the dogs on a holiday because Paddy came accustomed to living in Europe for a couple of years as we traveled through Europe. Lived remotely basically in the early days of the Powerful Man. And he loved Italy. And I mean, what an amazing standard, right? Your dog gets used to living abroad, and Amelia gets used to being able to take him anywhere we want. So now the norm upon returning to the UK and setting up base here is that the dogs must have a holiday. Right, how cool is that? I love it. Anyway, we're on a little island just off Wales called Anglesey, and we saw it on a program, Robson Green, like Amazing Places in the UK. Oh my! I was just blown away by the beauty, the beaches, the scenery, the mountains, the forests, everything. And when we came here last May, it was breathtaking. Like, it's small enough so that you can easily get around, but also big enough so that it's a lot of countryside and great scenery, and surrounded by ocean, and the mountains of Snowdonia are just in the distance, and it's just stunning. So yeah, we're having a great time. Been hiking every day, different places, and I get to jump on this and record this with my very good friend and partner, Mr. Doug Holt. So life is great.
Awesome. I'm actually, as soon as you mentioned that, I went to Google, of course, and to look up photos. 895 reviews, almost all 5-star for the island. Sounds amazing. You're living a good life when the lifestyle your dogs require is better than is what most people listening to this podcast want for their own personal life. Location independence, traveling, foreign lands. Amazing, man. Amazing.
And here's the caveat, right? So we have we're renting a cottage right now, like in the middle of nowhere. It's on its own, no neighbors, that kind of thing, with an acre of land. So not only do we go out hiking with the dogs every day to like blue flag beaches and forests and like amazing places, when they then come back, we get to sit in the garden in the sun and literally throw the ball for Paddy in an acre of land. Like he is in his element, absolute element. It's just phenomenal. And I love how, Amelia dresses it up. Oh, this is for the dogs. And, even if she didn't dress it up like this is for the dogs, I'd still come here.
Yeah.
It's great.
The life to live. I mean, truly living the life you talk about. I love it. Well, Tim, we talked about this a little bit off air, and this came up for one of the guys, and I thought it'd be a good question for us to broach today. And it's a conversation that comes up a lot for people that are in intimate relationships, and really any relationship. But the way the conversation or question was addressed to me, and I'll throw it your way, Tim, and we'll see how you answer. Maybe you got some different insights than I gave. Was let me set the scene. So at home here, this guy's at home with his wife, and his wife makes a comment. Makes a comment to him. Really just asks him to do something, and he gets triggered, starts yelling at her. He's upset. He's yelling at her. Not only is he upset, but he rants and raves and goes so far as he builds up. He even goes downstairs after her. Now, some time's transpired, and continues the conversation, right? And of course, both of them, as this happens with any argument, both partners walk away upset at each other. And when I say yelling, it wasn't like top of the lungs yelling, but they're fighting, right? And the fighting continued. And his question was, how do I prevent myself from doing that? from overreacting, even though, Doug, I was right? How do I present myself from reacting and yelling at my partner?
Even though I was right.
You got to throw that in, right?
uh, yeah. We all think we're right in that situation, don't we? Otherwise, we wouldn't chase them down the stairs, continuing to argue the point. It is awful being in that situation, isn't it? Oh my God. I can remember when I used to be in that situation so often. One, because I didn't have the tools or the awareness. And two, I was in the wrong relationship. So the question is, sorry, could you just repeat the question once more for me? I was just getting lost in the, even though I'm right.
Yeah. So essentially the question I got was, my wife said something, we got in an argument. How do I stop myself from reacting and yelling at her?
Okay, cool. So, for what works well for me in this situation? So usually, if something gets said to us in a relationship, usually the trigger is either we see some truth in what they're saying, or we feel like we are being attacked in some way. Like as a man, we pride ourselves on strength and the ability to provide, you know? So if the woman is saying something and we underneath it are interpreting it as a slur on our ability to provide and protect, we can take it quite personally. So, you know, there's a few answers to the question, isn't there? The first one is being aware of actually the reaction that's happening, which is a whole piece around consciousness and just simply being aware of how you feel and act and what you think on a moment-to-moment, day-to-day basis. And there's an angle within the actual relationship and being able to take a moment, pause, breathe, you know, take complete ownership for your side of the street and be able to communicate consciously. Because usually in this situation, if there is a reaction, then like I say, one, it's either because you are seeing some truth in what the other person has said and it hurts. So as a result, you want to go into, reaction mode so you can protect yourself and defend yourself. Or maybe this guy's just had a tough day in his business and, he's reached full capacity in his business and he's not been able to switch off, or he's not been delegating properly, or he comes home and he's bringing all those problems home with him, and his wife may say something that isn't out of line or isn't, a reflection of how he's, showing up for the family. I mean, we've heard many stories as well where, the wife can ask a very simple question that's pretty unrelated to them as an individual guy. And I know I've experienced this, and I'm sure you have, Doug, too. And even that can trigger you to blow up just because you're at capacity in your business. You don't know how to switch off. So I'm curious, how do you go, in this situation, how would you go about being able to diffuse this? What would be the first step that you would take?
So right now or previous, Doug?
Right now.
Right now. So the first thing, right now what I do is I catch myself very quickly, right? And the question I ask, and this has taken me, admittingly, a very long time to get to this point. Very long. If you look up the word stubborn, it's been joked that my picture is in the dictionary, and I'm sure you can probably contest to that and some things. But
No.
One thing I ask myself is, would I rather be right or would I rather be happy? Right. And that's something I ask myself now. And now the answer is always happy at the end of the day. I just know that everything works better when I'm connected with my wife. Everything works better when we're harmonious. And who is to really define what is right and what's wrong anyway? And usually when I'm going for making sure that I'm right, that's my ego playing into the game. And that's a decision I made for my own life after doing work in the Amazon jungle and doing other stuff to step out of in a much greater fashion. So having said that, I can say the previous versions of me much rather be right, because I'm definitely right this time. And that's why you laughed and I laughed when he said that. So that's the first thing I do is, would I rather be right or would I rather be happy? The second thing I ask myself is, what part of what my wife said, in this case for me, what part of what she said did I believe was true? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I answer that, because the analogy I always use, and I talked about this with the men, is if I walked around and to you listening to this now, if I called you purple, I said, hey, you're purple, you would look at me like I'm ridiculous and just laugh. Why would you do that? Well, the reason you wouldn't react with anything other than laughter is because you know you're not purple. However, if I said you're fat and you really think you're fat, you get offended. If you're skinny, you just laugh it off because you're just like, whatever, or you have really strong, self, beliefs. Or if I said you're white or you're black and, for some reason that triggers you, you get upset. Point being is the reason we get upset is we, as you said, believe parts of that true. So I asked myself, what part of that, did I think was true? And the third thing I go through, Tim, is I say, where have I felt like this before in my life? Because oftentimes what happens, especially in relationships, and it happened to this guy actually, when I brought it up to him, is it's really something that's triggered from the past, right? So my wife might say something to me like, oh, can you take out the trash? And I might snap like, what are you talking about? I do everything around here. I bring in the income. I cleaned, I vacuumed today. And, go in this whole tirade and storm out like a little child. And really all she's doing is asking me to take out the trash. But in my listening, maybe what I heard was I was lazy or I'm not good enough, or it's something that my parents told me or a teacher told me I never follow through with something in the past. And so I'm trying to figure out where that linkage is, where that actually comes from. So I still get upset, right? That I don't really get over that. I mean, I laugh a lot more and I catch myself a lot quicker. Now, typically it's in seconds or minutes rather than days and weeks like it used to be. So those are the three things I start with.
Hey guys, I want to interrupt this episode because I want to talk to you about something important. We put together a case study on how almost 300 men have taken control of their lives. They're 4Xing their business revenues and they're having more connected and intimate sex, all without sacrificing their relationships or their health by using the activation method. Now, a lot of you have contacted us and they want to know how they're doing it. We put together this short 11-minute case study just for you, so you can see how these entrepreneurs are achieving this level of success. To get this case study, all you have to do is go over to thepowerfulman.com/11. Yep, that's 11. And you can get the case study right now. All right, it's only 11 minutes and it's going to show you exactly how these men have done it. All right, let's get back to the episode.
It's really a self problem before it's a relationship problem, isn't it? Because for you, for me, for anyone, the listeners, to be able to act a certain way in a relationship, it first starts with them being able to bring a certain level of consciousness or awareness, rather, to their own personal life. Amelia and I, whenever we get in these situations these days, look, fortunately for us, it often just gets diffused with laughter because we're able to both see through the emotion and ego that is usually driving the heated conversation in the moment. And then we're able to communicate clearly what both parties want from a place of love instead of anger or frustration or resentment or whatever. Now, obviously, by no means are we perfect. We're still on the journey completely. We're on the path. We're always working at it. However, if I hadn't have been through my own, growth, and if I don't stick to my own personal routines, working out, meditation, journaling, everything, it all feeds into me being in a particular state that then underpins a type of presence I then take into the relationship. It really underpins everything that I am then able to do to communicate without feeling like a victim, without judgment, and at the same time be able to take the lessons that she's communicating as well. Like you said, what's really true here. Taking ownership. We've spoken a lot on previous shows about, taking care of your side of the street before you look at others. And if Amelia's bringing something to me and she, maybe communicating it in a heated way, I'm sure there's something there there is always something there for me to take from it, something that I get to do, something that I get to improve upon. And in order for me to be able to take that on board, I get to do that without judgment or feeling attacked or victimized. And again, it comes back to me being able to have done the work on myself first and foremost.
Beautiful. It absolutely does. And then there's another piece to this puzzle, and obviously it doesn't apply to you and Amelia, but it does apply. Well, I mean, it does, I guess, but it applies to this gentleman. Is once you've gotten to this realization, Tim, let's just say it's you and Amelia or you and this person, then what? You realize that you've reacted and have said something. Well, not you, but him. And now what do you do?
So whenever I've been in this position before, I apologize. So let's say that you are Amelia, Doug. Let's see if you can play that role for a second. Let's say that you and I have just, I've overreacted to something you said. I would then approach you. I would eat the frog, so to speak, and approach you in a very humble way with my tail no doubt between my legs and apologize. It may go something like this. Hey, I'm sorry for what I said before. I'm sorry for how I reacted. I didn't mean it. And I just felt that when you said X, Y, Z, I felt that I was X, Y, Z. I was either, you were blaming me for something, or I didn't feel good enough, or I felt like you were questioning my ability to provide, or I felt like whatever, always making it about me, basically. I'm sorry, here's what you did, and this is how I chose to feel. And I recognize that, and I apologize for that. And moving forward, here's what I'm going to do to rectify it. And here is what I heard you say you want me to do. So I'm taking ownership of my side of the street. I'm communicating honestly and clearly about what really went on within me that caused me to react. I'm saying what I'm going to do differently moving forwards, and also clarifying that it's in alignment with what she actually desired as well. Because, last thing I want to do is say, oh, and I've got it, sorry, and here's why, and this is what I'm going to do moving forwards. And it not even be what she wants. So I definitely want to clarify as well that is actually what she desires. And if it's not, then cool, I can do what I was thinking and do what she desires as well.
So the problem with that is I don't get to play Amelia's role here. You just took it all from me. I was getting excited about that. I was getting warmed up.
I kind of took a step back. Like, shit, don't play Amelia's role.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, because I can only get myself into trouble with that one. No, you're spot on. The only thing I do differently, or maybe an adjunct to that, is I share with some vulnerability within power, right? I believe that as a man, you can be confident in your power and still be vulnerable. In fact, I think it's actually the ultimate sign of power is when you can be vulnerable. But I share what that trigger is. So, in the example we talked about, my wife comes to me and says something, and I'm asking myself these questions, right? Do I want to be right, or do I want to be happy? What's more important to me? 1, 2, where did that trigger? What did I believe was true? And 3 is, where did that come from in the past? I share that last part, number 3, with her, and I might say, "Look, I'm sorry I snapped. Just when you asked me to take out the trash, what I heard you say was that I'm not man enough to help out our family. I'm not good enough. I'm not doing the right things." And that really made me feel like I was less than a man and less than a provider of the family that I want to be. And so I immediately just reacted, and I apologize. And so I'll say something along those lines and let her know where I'm coming from and what I'm actually feeling, or what feeling evoked for me, or where it occurred from in the past, because usually it has nothing to do with what the person in front of you is doing, right? It's our interpretation of what they're doing or what they're saying that gets us to react, not the actual actions. So for this gentleman I'm talking about, Tim, and you know him, great guy. And when I brought this up to him, he just looked dumbfounded, on the phone. He's like, "Oh man, my wife asked me to take out the trash, and all I heard was, 'You're lazy,'" which brought me back to my childhood, where my childhood, my parents, my family, all they did was call me lazy. The whole joke around my family was basically that I'm lazy. And, this guy's a business owner, by all means, other men would look at him as like an alpha leader. Great guy. Last thing is lazy. He just happened to be laying in bed at the time she asked him a question, a very simple question, which then triggered in his mind being lazy and brought him back to those old times, and then brought that whole pattern, of being this young boy afraid, of course, and then being less than a man. And he just snapped at his wife right away, which continued. And when I got off the phone with him, it looked like he was going to be doing some explaining.
Yeah, and so it should.
The best part about that, and it's the best part because I can relate to it so well, and I'm guessing you can, and the men on this call, is when I asked him that, he just was so into being right. I used to be, but I'm right. But you don't get it. I'm right. I do so much around this house. I work so hard. I would go through all this justification, not even realizing that that's not even the point. Two is I probably totally misunderstood what the person was trying to communicate to me. And I didn't even take any time to get clarification. I just instantly snap and react. It's just so funny to look back at those times. And those can be hard times. And a lot of relationships that you and I get to go into and talk to the men, and sometimes, the women too. We talk to people's, if they enter the brotherhood or some of our more advanced programs, a lot of times we get communications with the wives and partners and to see what's really going on. These types of communications happen on a regular basis. And it keeps, every time these communications happen, these divides, and if they don't get rectified, it's just another wedge in the relationship that continues to separate until it actually breaks off. And what we talk about soon, next thing you know, their wildly in love couple turns into roommates that happen to be living in the same house that don't even like each other, right? Start noticing everything that you don't like about the other person.
Yeah, and you know what? You said something that's so key, and it's often the go-to validation that a lot of the men that we work with use. And I used to use it a lot, and sometimes I still do. And fortunately, I catch myself, and if I don't, Amelia is very quick to remind me of this. And that is, I'm the man. I do the work. You just don't get how hard I work. And it's almost like that sense of entitlement comes over me and others that we know. And at the same time, we want to be the provider. We want to provide and protect. It's crazy, isn't it? The one thing that we love to do, we then use as a kind of weapon to then say, you just don't get this, and I just work so hard, and blah, blah, blah. Amelia always likes to remind me, look, I ask you to do this. This is your dream. I love what you do, and I'm here to support you, but you can't use that against me. And it's so true, but it's often the go-to kind of validation, isn't it? It's the go-to backup. It's the go-to card in the back pocket that often the guys will pull out to validate them feeling this way. But it's never the truth. It's never, ever the truth. Once you peel that away and get to the root of, well, it triggered me being lazy because as a child I used to get picked on for being called lazy. That's the real root here that's going on with all this.
Yeah, and the feeling of self-worth, right? And knowing that you're not lazy, like knowing to your core of who you are. So if that lazy trigger comes up, you can combat it, so to speak, or recognize it quickly and laugh at it for what it is. A comment made about a child. And, hopefully, if you're listening to this, you're no longer a child. But who knows? But that actually brings us into our next podcast episode, which I'll talk about here in a second. But Tim, any last words here before we wrap up?
No, I've really enjoyed it. I hope the listeners have taken a lot of value from it. I'd love to hear any feedback, any questions. I'd happily answer them for you guys. And thank you for listening. And the podcast is growing week on week. We're getting more and more downloads, which is exciting. So hopefully you guys are really enjoying it.
Yeah, guys, we look forward to hearing from you into the Facebook community. Of course, if you could leave a review, that always helps us reach other men just like you and hopefully provide more and more value. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and leave those in the Facebook community, The Activation Method. Tim and I will pick them up. We're in there regularly answering questions along with the other coaches. And guys, next episode, what we're going to talk about is what does leaving your clothes on the floor have to do with you being a man? That's it for us this episode. Until next time, we'll see you here on the Powerful Man Show.